So a couple of things that I've observed about the conference today. It would appear that smart grids are largely a male occupation. And I hope this is one of the things that will change. Great, thank you very much. The next one is that it's all to do with the customer. And this is about the customer experience. Pilgrim talked about the customer wanting everything, everywhere. And that's true. If you don't transact with me in the way that I want to transact, I will, to use Rizwan's word this morning, I will disconnect from you as a provider. And I will switch to someone who transacts with me in the way that I want to transact. So my message today is really, in terms of routes to customers, we need to put as much intellectual energy into engineering the routes to customers, because that's where the value is. And I think this raises some interesting questions for Oki and for distribution in terms of where are the billing systems come from, which will allow us to work in completely new ways. And I, for one, am incredibly frustrated by the energy bills that I get. I cannot figure out how they're charging me and make reasonable comparisons. So thank you. And the customer experience is not just about the user interface. Chris Wright talked about return to draw. I'm interested in the time that it takes to return to draw. And David Dollarhide of Direct Energy, working with multiple partners to engineer new customer experiences, gave me time to kitchen and draw. And so with customers, we face multiple choices. This is the everything, anywhere aspect. And there are all sorts of flows in this very unsmart network. These flows are sometimes information flows, they are bidirectional flows, they are sometimes product flows, they are sometimes service flows. So we need a framework for dealing with this in order to make sensible resource allocation decisions. Because there are multiple touch points in terms of everything, anywhere. Part of the touch point relates to value to the customers. What are my preferences as a customer? What's the impact that you have on me? What outcomes can I have? What are my choices? And will I convert quickly to becoming a customer? And how many of my friends will convert to becoming your customer as well? And we have to balance that with the costs. What's the cost of the channel to reach me? Am I going to buy through a retailer? Am I going to buy direct from a provider? How's the information going to reach me? What are the costs of that information? And how do we get the right information at the right time? What's the transaction cost of that part of the value chain? What's the media cost for getting my attention and commitment? So we have multiple touch points through the buying cycle, through demand generation, through pre-sales, through signing an order, to supplying and service. And around supply, I don't just mean supplying energy. What we're talking about here is changing behaviours of individuals, changing behaviours of communities, changing behaviour of organisations, changing behaviour of society. And the barriers to change, the barriers to adoption and deployment of new ways of supplying and using energy, the barriers to purchase and use of smart energy products in the home are addressed by two things. They're addressed by product design, the user interface, but fundamentally the barriers are either lowered or eliminated by what? There's a clue on the slide. Services. So if we don't provide the services which educate, train, provide finance, some of these elements can be built into the user interface, some of these elements can be built into the design of the product. But it's about service provision. And services marketing is fundamentally different, both academically and practically, to product marketing. And it's kind of hard to find good services marketing people at present. And so there is a heartbeat to the consumer. There's a rate at which things are changing. And so cost and value changes by different consumer segments. Cost and value changes according to the value of the offer to those different segments. And these needs and wants and values are changing over time through the buying cycle. And they are also varying by channel. So what we can do on the web, the costs are different, the impact is different, the value is different in each step in the buying cycle, and it's different throughout the buying cycle for whichever different channels we choose to use: web, mobile, call center, reseller of energy. But if my switching costs are low as a consumer, I'm the one who gets to decide. I decide that someone's called me from the call center, made me aware of a new offer, and generated some demand. I do some investigation. I go into a reseller to look at these home energy network products, and I go back to the web to buy them. I go back to the retailer because I want to have some advice on physical supply, and in terms of service and support, I prefer to use my mobile. That's one of how many different potential touch points through those channels and different routes to market. We've got a 4x5 matrix, so we've got about 2,880 different choices. So we need to know that we're allocating our resources, we're engineering the customer experience as effectively as possible. So we need to engineer and track the customer experience. We need to segment for customer preferences of how they want to transact as much as what they want to transact. And we can then optimize our resource allocation by segment, by offer, by channel, by stage in the buying cycle, by cost and by value, depending on what our objectives are. So, how do we engineer and track the customer experience? We track every single step in the process through sales and fulfillment. How many of you have done this for your go-to-market strategy to determine your routes to customers? Great. I've got 2 indicators. 3. Excellent. How many segment for customer preferences? Same 2 people. That's what it might look like. This is my data combined with everyone else's data. So this raises the question of the trusted brand. Who do I trust with my data? And I, for one, as a consumer, have relatively low levels of trust compared to other brands with my current energy suppliers. I don't necessarily trust them. It also raises the question of data partnerships. If I'm a provider, if I'm a brand, with whom could I be partnering to add value? Segmentation tells us where the potential value is. This is the customer effective demand network. We're in this interesting shift from producer-efficient supply chains, which are around cost minimization in so many different industries, to the customer-effective demand network, which is about value generation, value management. And then finally, we can think about optimizing how we spend our money by segment, by offer, by channel, by stage in the buying cycle. So we optimize both for efficient allocation of resources or by changing the constraints to really make a difference in terms of how we go to market. And so, Department of Energy and Climate Change say major changes to the way power is generated, moved and consumed are taking place. And the real value is understanding intimately the consumer. Thank you very much.